Hello and welcome to this class on Transformative Learning Theory. This is a completely online class, and so what we've done for you is we created a series of about 7 videos that outline Transformative Learning Theory as it appeared originally back in the 1970s with Jack Mesereau and Paulo Freire, and we trace it forward. And so what's important to note about this class is that we start off with transformative learning at the individual level. Fundamental shifts in assumptions and associated behaviors caused by a disorientation that is experienced by the individual, reflected upon with the help of other people, and then essentially transformed into a new way of doing things or a new worldview or role or self-identity in the world. So first we'll look at the individual level, and then we'll look at group transformation. This is a fundamental shift in the basic assumptions held by the group. Then what we'll do is, as we look at a collection of groups, we put those together, teams. Now we're looking at organizational transformation. And this is really important because transformation really begins with the individual, right? An individual transformation is fantastic, but if you can do this and manage transformation at a group and organizational level, it can really create a deeper impact. And you can begin to imagine how these things associate with team building and leadership development. Next, we're going to look at the way multiple organizations impact world transformation. And this is sort of going from a micro to a macro to what Otto Scharmer calls a mundo view, meaning world view, of change. And here we get into things such as corporate responsibility, etc. What's really important when it comes to transforming the world is the idea of looking at underlying ideologies that impact the way that we think about our world. So the assumptions that society runs under, and the way that sometimes those assumptions are hegemonic, or they actually create bad unintended consequences for the people who live in that society, even though the people who live in that society aren't even aware that despite it looking like the best intentions of society, the system itself tends to hold people down. So what we're doing in this class is we're going to introduce you to every single major author in this area. We're going to give you critiques on transformative learning. We're going to talk about experience as reflected upon through the lens of narrative. So we'll actually begin to look at your own personal narrative and the role that narrative plays in transforming your own experience so that you're actually transforming yourself within a system, leading transformation in teams, and then essentially the organization, and if you wish, the world through something that we call social action. In addition to learning from all of the great scholars and practitioners in their writings, we're also going to be looking at a few different people who are well known in the field. So we're going to get 3 people talking to you via WebEx at 3 different points in time over this online course. So you have a chance to read their work and interact with them. And the idea behind this course is that you're going to take your narrative, the way that you appear in the cohort, and your story as a member of the cohort and what the cohort is like. You're going to develop that story on your own, your choice of what you'd like to write about, and then you're going to carry that story through the class. So during the entire class, you're going to be reflecting on your own assumptions about the world and how they take part in your story and your relationship with the cohort and what you want to get out of your cohort experience in this doctoral program. And then, so at the very end, you will look back at your narrative and you're going to write something called, we have in the beginning, we have the story. And then you're going to write something called the next chapter. That is, that your story, recognizing that even though your story may fundamentally change as a result of reflecting on assumptions, etc., there's still room for further growth. So we might call this part of our class tentative best judgment moving forward. And the idea here is that even though you've got a story, we'll say that this is a piece of paper with your story on it, you will actually be reflecting on your story over a period of time, and it would be very helpful to print out your story so that you can mark where you see certain beliefs and values appearing. And you can also look at things that are absent from your story, or parts of your story that you actually censored. The good news is that because stories are so sensitive and intimate, when we write about the self, we want to really open up. The assignment at first is going to be sharing the story directly with myself. So just your instructor. You're not going to need to share the story with anybody else in the cohort. And the reason why we're doing that is because I will get involved and I will basically be looking at commonalities in the stories. These include shared assumptions in all of your stories, unique assumptions, and also some interesting twists and turns in your narrative. So we might call these themes that you have in common. And understanding these things are really important because the word story and meaning are inherently intertwined. In fact, the word for narrative and meaning grew up together etymologically. The word meinen, which is spelled, was the original root of the word meaning. And meinen, which was a word that first appeared in the story of Beowulf, which itself was an oral tradition passed on through story, that word literally translated to mean narrative. So what we will be doing essentially in this class is exploring meaning making through story, the way that we reflect upon it through various levels, the individual level, the team or group level, the organizational level, and worldwide through the lens of social action and the place that it stems from, which happens to be critical theory.